This is the next instructional video of this racing lawnmower quick start guide. Well, this is it. This is the machine that we're going to build. And you're saying, wait a minute, I thought we were going to build it. Well, it's done. And I've slipping this video in the front. It should be the third or fourth video in the series, basically. And I wanted to do that so that you'd have a kind of a visual image of what we're building. You can kind of see the end result of the changes and kind of see why. So anyway, I just wanted to show it. I'm going to move over here and give you a little bit of view from afar. So there we go. Now I also wanted to mention that I compress these videos so they'll fit on the DVD if you pick up the DVD from our Racing Association, or if you're watching them on YouTube. I actually run them through a compression tool, and I was noticing that some of the images and some of the videos, it's taken a lot of the resolution quality, the video image quality out of it. So I have to apologize for that up front. That's kind of a trade-off, either size versus high quality image. I noticed that some of the parts and whatnot after I'd done it, with the lighting in my shop and the angle I was holding the camera, it made it kind of hard to see. So if you run into anything that it's just not quite clear and you're just kind of stuck, then by all means, send me an email, contact anyone in our Racing Association, and they'll help answer it. So the other thing that I also want to mention again is, my intentions with this guide is to show you how to build an entry-level racing lawnmower. And I found it was a little bit harder than I thought to hold the camera, discuss what I was doing, the changes, and move around and show. So some of the videos kind of shaky, and like I say, my intention is to show you how to build a lawnmower, not show you how I can, generate high quality video. So, alright, so let's go through this front to back real quick, and I'll just point out a few of the big things that we do. First of all, this is lowered. Doesn't look low sitting up on this stand, but it's 6 inches. Now stock they're right around 11. This is 6 inches from the ground or the deck to the bottom of the frame, and that's the rules that we follow. The rules are 4 inches. I like them to be around 6 inches. I found they're easier to build. You start running into clearance issues in the back when you get them down to 4 inches and you're still doing the jack shaft and the transaxle. So anyway, I want to show the front end here, and we got the heim joint on the bottom. We've got the square tubing running through the frame. Now I bolt that in, and then the other thing is I'm using grade 3 bolts, and I drill a hole up here and run a cotter pin through it. So that's a safety issue. I also do that as well on the outer. Now I run castle nuts on the outer and do the same, drill a hole, put cotter pins in it. We also talk about the bearings and stuff like that, and the spacer that you have to have. So those are in place. This front end allows me to cast or camber. I can change the wheels in any configuration I need, and it allows me to have this. I can kick this outer wheel out so that when I turn, it will pull. It'll turn better. That's a lot of the toe in, toe out, caster camber. That's why we do that, make them adjustable. So I also want to mention, I don't know if you can see it, but right here, this is kind of slanted back. It's 12 degrees. Now we normally shoot for 10, 10, 10. This one landed at 12, and these are at 12. I do know that angle right there. That puts that at 12, and then we kick that spindle down. Gives you some adjustment. And we found that they trail better, they handle better, and it gets into this wheel jacking type thing that you need. What it does is when you crank the wheel hard, it actually is a performance issue on the back end. It gets the back end to behave the way we want so that it'll start to drift rather than tip. So that's a lot of why we do that. So anyway, I've got my deck on. Now that's a tin that I found over at Home Depot. for household items. And I just cut it in half. It's aluminum. It's got a nice rolled edge. I put grip tape down on this to lock your feet in. And I've got this edge that I've put on here as a foothold. You would be surprised, like I mentioned over and over again, you know, the tracks are small, the turns are tight, and the speeds are quite fast for these machines. So you find yourself trying to hold on, and it's trying to slide you off of it. It really is. So I put these on. A lot of our racers do. They're allowed. You can lock your feet in, the outer edge of your foot, and as you're leaning, a lot of times you're hanging off the seat, you've got a spot to lock your foot in. And that's what that's for. So I've got my double pedal. Now this is the brake pedal, and I did tack on here, add some, I just call it grip. They're just tacks from my welder. I just found that when we get in and they water the track, or we've been in racing before and thunderstorms come in, this solid piece of steel gets really slick. So we've got our solid steering wheel, my hand throttle set up, which we discussed. I've got my tether here. I really like these tethers versus the little rubber ones. I got my start button. Then the other thing that I've got going is, and I discussed this, the way this one was working was like most of them, you know, you push your throttle lever up when it's stock, and then you go a little farther and it pushes in a choke. Well, I found that as I was squeezing my hand throttle all the way in, it was pushing it into choke while I was driving it. So to get around that, I just picked up a mechanical choke, and that's what that is. So I've got my shift lever up here. Shift up as close to the steering wheel as you can so you can do quick shifts. You're not reaching down in here trying to find a gear, go up or down. Usually you're up and down and you're shifting in a corner, so you're fighting the machine through the corner, and now you need to go a gear. Well, it's nice to be able to just quickly tap that one way or the other. So, and that's why I do that. I have also, as I got this down to height, the way the frame was set up was it kind of kicked down at an angle about an inch in the back. So I ended up being at 3.5 inches. So I just took a saw and cut that off, a Sawzall. And then I welded this piece of angle back on it to give it some strength. That's where you tow from. It's where I tie down to, and that's what this is for. This is a tie down spot. And I just put that bend back in there. It's a rigidity thing. Rigid. Keep the frame rigid. So I've got my tensioner up here for my top belt. My jack shaft, you can barely see. Oh, you can't. I was hoping you could see the top pulley of my jack shaft. Maybe you can. But I've got this tensioner setup that I've come up with, and so far it's working well with the adjuster. The other ones I've done, I've just had a slot on a pivot, and then that pivots the pulley in to tighten that up. And I've found that it's kind of a fight. Two people have to do it. Someone has to be laying underneath the machine, someone has to be on the top with a bar, and then you set it into place and then tighten it. So this is working so far. I think I'll stick with this method. And I do go over this. Here's the back end of my shift linkage. And I did have to flip this over, and then I drilled another hole on the outside so it would clear the edge of the transaxle. Not a lot of adjustment on that. So, and I think that that's about it, really. Let me lift the hood. That's the other thing. We put these, I'm using these bolts. Some of the guys use the just pins, the cotter pins that'll clip through. You want to find some way to hold the hood down. When you're racing on a rough track, this hood just sits and bounces all over. So that's what those are for. I'll just use these wing nuts down here. And there's my choke mechanism. There's my hand throttle down on the bottom. Let me run that. And that's it. I'm using the springs like I told you. If you go through that, it's working well. It's still allowing the governor to run, so I'm not directly hooked to the butterfly valve on the carburetor. And so far, I think I'm running in the RPMs. I'll put a tachometer and dial it in. I might have to add a little bit stiffer spring or a little lighter. But it's still, as I was running it, I was watching, I'm revving it and the governor arm starts moving, the throttle linkage. And so that was working for me. And it is responsive through the range. So I think I'll stick with that by changing that stock spring out to stiffer. So the other thing that I've got going as well, now you can see my battery. It's tucked down in there. Now batteries are heavy, so I try to move it into the center of the machine, center of gravity. That's why I put them right there. And it's a clean, easy place to get them out of the way. So I got all my wiring. We go through the wiring on this. I like to have it in split loom, tucked away. I do use the stock wiring, pull all the safety switches out. I do keep the main connection. I don't know if you can see it down in there. Can't. But I keep the main connection to the motor. If I have to pull the motor, to get this motor out, it's disconnect a couple cables, disconnect the exhaust, disconnect that wiring, 4 bolts, and it's out. So that's why I do that. And I like the wiring to be clean and tucked up. The other thing that I've done here, and this is my preference, is the exhaust here. Now what I do with the exhaust, I've done this on 3 of the machines now, is I cut the stock exhaust piece off. You can see that right there. That's just stock. I cut that off with about a 1/2 inch sticking out. And then I use the Volkswagen, the Stinger exhausts you'll find on the Bajas and the Sandrails and stuff like that. I'll slip that over. They've got the tight bends. They're a little bit bigger. And that's what the bends are. And then I finally moved to, and I watch the classifieds for motorcycle exhaust. And you'll find a lot of people like to change out the Harley exhaust. So you'll find the Harley mufflers kicking around for cheap. I paid 15 bucks for that muffler. So, and I've run this on 3 of my machines. That's what I've got going. It increases the airflow and it changes the sound of the machine. Now we've got some racers that run just the stock J tubes and they just come out and that's it. They point down. I'm not sure if it gives you a competitive advantage. Motor logic tells you the faster you can get the burnt fuel out, the faster you can get the clean air fuel mixture in, and so you get more performance. However, it's a governed motor, so you're not going to be spinning this machine up into the RPMs that you would see that performance gain. So, and I also watch some of the spectators when we race, and when those guys come by that just have those J-tubes, the spectators plug their ears, they're kind of turning away, even the little kids, and usually kids like loud things. So, and I found that when us racers that do exhaust work on our machines go by, they just enjoy the race. So that's the other reason I do that. And I don't want to hear it either. So I don't think that I should have to be wearing earplugs in the pits, but I know that I don't wear earplugs around my machine. So anyway, that's why I do that. It gives them a deeper rumble. I also like that sound, and people like it. When you're running the machines, they like that deep rumble. It's kind of funny. So I think that's about all I've got going with this. I just wanted to walk through it, make sure I've touched on everything. And I did do as well this wrap, exhaust wrap. That's not mandatory, but I do it because of where I end up running the exhaust right up here. And that's all. I had some kicking around from another project, and that's part of why it's on there. If you have it, use it, So I think that's all I've got. So this is it. This is the one I'm building. This is my daughter's. And the only thing I have left is to do the transaxle. We will weld up the transaxle, and so that'll be one of the last lessons. I've done a few of them, and it works well. So I think that's it for now, and we'll just run through these lessons and get you building. So, and like I say, if you've picked up this DVD from us, You know, we are the Utah State Lawnmower Racing Association, so if you have questions, need help, any of that stuff, contact our race director, look us up, and you know, that's the funny thing about racers. You know, they like to compete against each other, but they sure love to get people involved, and they're always willing to help. I've never found any of the racers that, even when I've been at the track and it's like, oh, wow, I need this part. Have you got one? Somebody's got one. They're like, sure, take it. You know, just get yourself back on the track and racing. So anyway, it's a great thing to do, and I think that's about it. We'll talk to you later.